but the constitution effort was not managed at the federal level.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to this hour of worship shared between 7 Unitarian Universalist congregations. Welcome on behalf of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lynn, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Marblehead, the First Church in Salem, the First Parish Church in Beverly, the Gloucester Unitarian Universalist Church, the First Universalist Church of Essex, and the First Religious Society of Newburyport. We are so glad to be together this morning and so glad to have you as a part of our shared community. Just a few housekeeping considerations as we gather this morning on Zoom. Please mute yourself using the red microphone button in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, other than when you have a speaking role in the service. If you encounter a technical issue and need some help resolving it, you can use the chat function, another button also somewhere in the lower section of your screen, to send a message to any of our tech hosts, who helpfully have the word host included in their screen names. We are grateful for the work of Kenneth Griffith of Greater Lynn and Cynthia Walsh of Newburyport for supporting us as tech hosts this morning. Once again, thank you for being a part of this hour of worship and thanksgiving. We could not be all that we are without your presence among us this morning.
For this Good morning, everyone. I'm Reverend Janet Parsons, and I would have like to share a story with you this morning. It's called The Thanksgiving Door, and it's written by Debbie Atwell. Now, one Thanksgiving, there was an older couple named Ed and Ann, and they were going to be home alone for the holidays, which I know is something a lot of us can relate to this week. And they were busy with all of their preparations, and all of a sudden they realized that smoke was pouring out of the oven and that they had burned their dinner beyond salvaging. Now, this resonated with me. I don't know if any of the rest of you have ever burned Thanksgiving dinner, but it is a real thing. And poor Ann was so upset that she just left the kitchen and went into another room and began ironing. But Ed was really hungry. And he said, "Let's go see if that new restaurant down the street is open." "Well, all right," Ann said, "but it's not going to be the same." So Ed and Ann walked down the street to the New World Cafe, and the door was wide open, so they walked in. "Hooray," said Ed, and he hung up their coats. There was one long table in the middle of the restaurant, and it was set with many places. And Ann stopped and looked at the table centerpiece. And in the centerpiece, there was a figure of a pilgrim and one of a Native American, and then one of a dancing man with a big beard. "I'm not sure we should be here, Ed," she said. "Nonsense," said Ed. "The door was wide open." Meanwhile, out in the kitchen, there were many unhappy eyes peering through the door at Ann and Ed. "This is horrible," whispered Leon. "Who left the front door open? We can't have customers today. Our family party will be ruined." "Let's get rid of them," said Tatiana. She lifted some big pots over her head and said, "I'll bang these pots together. The noise will scare them away." Now, grandmother had heard all that she could bear. And so she dropped her peeled potato into the pot sitting on the floor by her feet and said, "Enough. In the old country, we bang pots at wolves, not at hungry people. Today is Thanksgiving Day, and this family has cooked a turkey as big as a doghouse, but we don't share? Bah!" She shook her head. "Grandmother is right," said Olga. "Go get some more chairs." So Olga brought out chairs to the dining room and showed Ed and Ann to the best seats in the middle of the table. And then Aunt Sophia brought 2 more place settings and for the table, and then grandmother came out and said, "Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We're glad that you are here." And that's how Ed and Ann found themselves as the guests of honor as this brand new American family celebrated their first Thanksgiving at the New World Cafe. Now, after dinner, Ed asked for the check, but nobody seemed to understand what he meant. They said, "Now we're going to dance. Please stay." Ed and Ann were surprised. They'd never danced at Thanksgiving before, but they were having such a great time that they agreed to stay. And they helped set up the room for dancing, moving the tables, and they helped by holding the babies, especially new baby Sonia. And then Uncle Carl struck up the band, and the dancing began. Ann loved to dance, and after being taught the Eastern European dances, she started teaching them how to do a conga line. And so soon they had a huge conga line going all the way around the restaurant. It was late when finally Ann and Ed left. They exchanged phone numbers, and Carl and Ed exchanged hats, and they gave Ann a centerpiece to take home. And when it was time to lock up the door to the New World Cafe, it wouldn't close. And so Papa bent down with a flashlight to look and see why the door was jammed, and he found a raw potato jammed under the door. "How did that get there?" he asked. "In the old country," said grandmother, "a Thanksgiving door is like a happy heart, opened up big and wide. A potato is good for that," she said. "I guess you're right," said Papa. And when Ann and Ed got home, they made tea and lit the candle in the centerpiece and sat at their table. And Ann asked Ed, What do you think you're the most thankful for on this wonderful Thanksgiving? And Ed thought about it for a minute, and finally he said, well, I guess I'd have to say that I am the most thankful that we burned our dinner. Oh, Ed, said Anne. Me too. The end.
Morning, folks. I'm Art McDonald, Minister Emeritus from Essex. So we're all very aware of what challenging times we're living through. And we know that our social service network is being stretched, food banks and shelters having high demand. But here on the North Shore, we're incredibly blessed with some wonderful ministries to people in need. One ministry that is an umbrella for several others is called Lifebridge Shelter here in Salem, which also is the umbrella for River House Shelter in Beverly and Grace Center up in Gloucester. And we're actually very proud to have as the president of Lifebridge, and I'm sure he's here with us somewhere this morning, Paul O'Leary, who's a member of our Unitarian Universalist congregation in Essex. And Paul, with so many others, has done a phenomenal job at Lifebridge. So the ministers gathered and decided that we would send our offering to this one wonderful ministry on the North Shore, Lifebridge Ministry. And if the technology would allow, I believe we're going to, maybe through a chat, give you the address. We're going to send our offerings to the Marblehead Church. And Seth, if you can put up the information or make donations, you could send a check to the church, or you could do it, I guess, through PayPal. And I see in the chat now, there's the opportunity there. And if we didn't get that, they're at 28 Mugford Street in Marblehead, 01945. Many thanks for the wonderful ministry, Paul and all who work at Lifebridge. Blessings to you.
Oh,
I invite you now to turn with me, both inward and outward, as we enter together into an attitude of meditation and of prayer. As the autumn enfolds our world in its russet blanket of leaves, just when the wind grows chill, let us turn our hearts towards those who need our care. In this moment, we reside in the company of ourselves and of each other, and of the holiness which dwells within and between all people. We share now a time when we are hungry, thirsty, lonely, and tired by degrees. An instant in which we are hopeful and scared, tearful and glad, solemn and playful, and curious and bold. Now is a time of celebration and gratitude, yet it is a strange and unfamiliar time in which we celebrate. In the week ahead, many of us face the prospect of a table set with empty chairs. So let us think now of those both gathered with us now and beyond our digital walls, who are alone and lonely, those who are sick, those who are hungry, those who are not free. Let us make room around the dining tables of our hearts for their cares, their needs, and the yearnings of their souls to sit together alongside our own. This past Friday marked the Transgender Day of Remembrance, a memorial to those people who have been victims of violence and hate because someone did not like that they called themselves women or men or neither or both. Let us remember especially this day, therefore, all people whose bodies and selves do not fit into the narrow expectations of the society we make together. May the day soon come when the threat of violence and the weight of oppression falls on no one for being who they truly are. Armored by a panoply of wants and made vulnerable by many different needs.
Oh, here, I'll just bring it upstairs like this.
Still, with a common heart we yearn for the health and well-being and freedom of all people, whether they live near or far, whether or not they look like us, whether or not they speak as we speak, whether or not they pray as we pray, whether or not they love us or hate us, whether or not we have yet found a way to love them, whether they be strangers or friends or our very own selves. May all people be healthy. May they be well. May they be free. And if this be not possible in the world we share, may we be among those whose calling it is to change the world. Amidst a sick and hurting earth, in the very real presence of grief, nonetheless, let us give thanks for the earth and its gifts, for the technology which allows us to gather this morning, and for our own breath. May the celebrations and thanksgiving of this time remind us that each of us is connected to every other being on this planet, and so we should be aware of and attentive to the quality and health of those connections. Amen.
Year 2020 has been a hard year. There's been so much loss. Human lives, yes, but also loss of livelihoods, of our old ways, the very fabric of our days. People who used to go to the office for work are now working from home, often juggling laundry and kids and meals while trying to do their work. Those are the lucky ones. Others are going to work wearing masks all day and wondering just what they will do one day that will cause them to come down sick. While the irritable public abuses them over mask wearing, distancing, or weird political correlations to these basic public safety items. All of the major events are different. Graduations were held outdoors, if at all. Proms were canceled. Kids didn't go to camp, and grandma didn't go visit. Birthday parties became drive-by affairs.
No.
Memorial services were held on Zoom. 4th of July fireworks were canceled. Labor Day came and went without the huge picnics and fun family times. And now, here we are, facing winter with our masks squarely still on our faces, our church services on Zoom, our children Zooming into school. These darkening days, the growing winter, are always made so cheery with the help of the gathering of family and friends. And now it's being recommended that we avoid traditional Thanksgiving gatherings. No full house at Thanksgiving. It feels like Thanksgiving has been canceled. Feelings of sorrow, loss, grief, anger, depression, moodiness, and just being overwhelmed are abundant. But along with our sorrows, there exists side by side the sorrow of those who lived here prior to the European invasion. This holiday fable of pilgrims and Indians sitting down side by side happily together doesn't match their side of what happened. As we embrace seeing things from different centers, this holiday takes on new complexity besides COVID. These are challenging times. Thankfully, Thanksgiving has a message to offer us if we can listen and if we can practice. My colleagues offer you some wisdom. Our elders from long ago have sent a message of how to thrive in challenging times. There is a thread that runs throughout the Psalms, and that is one of praise and gratitude, no matter what's happening. And so now I'd like to introduce Reverend Elizabeth Ide, who is going to share with you a psalm.
Even in the new complexity of this moment, all of us are nurtured by the abundance of the interconnected web of being to which we all belong. All of us are held here in the gravity that cradles our faults and our blessings, brought together by the very wholeness of all we are and ever will be on this planet, our home. The gift of wisdom handed down through generations that inspired our ancestors is more important than ever in these moments when we feel like we have little else. Between the strength we draw from our memories and the energy that brightens with our hope, we are connected to something greater than ourselves as we take in nourishment and honor the cycle of the seasons. Whatever else happens this week, let us be present to the fact that we are here together, drawn into community and held in place by the embrace of Mother Earth and the source of love that sustains us. Our reading today comes from Psalm 100, translated by Norman Fisher. All the earth shouts for you. We serve you joyfully. Come into your presence with thanksgiving songs. We know you, intimate as all. Know we come from you. We are you. Your people, flock of your pasture, wholly yours. As we enter your gate with thanksgiving songs, enter your court with chants of praise. We offer all our thanks and heap blessings on your unsayableness. For you are goodness, endless kindness, truthfulness now and throughout the generations. May these words of wisdom reach us with open minds, loving hearts, and willing hands. Blessed be.
We have become complacent about gratitude. We talk about it so damn much. We practice saying thank you so much that it has lost much of its meaning. Or rather, we have lost our practice of intention. We say thank you so much by rote that most of the time we don't even actually feel gratitude when we say it. We don't not mean it. We do mean the thank yous, of course, but we often don't really take time to feel it inside, to experience it when we say thank you. When we practice gratitude in this way of rushing and moving right through it and not being present, we sap it of much of its strength and power. Which might sound a little funny or counterintuitive to some of us. Our culture tends not to think of gratitude as strong and powerful, but it totally is. A friend of mine likes to share about the practice of gratitude she adopted after she got divorced. She was not feeling particularly grateful about her life at that point in time, and so she decided to write 10 things in her new gratitude journal every day. And it was really hard for her at first. She was very intentional about sticking with it, though, and finding little things to be grateful for, even if they were simple or occasionally slightly snarky things like no longer have to check to see the toilet seat is up. As she stuck with it, she realized that she was noticing more and more things in her life to be grateful for. And eventually, her gratitude practice created a profound shift in how she saw and related to the world. Now, I'm usually not a very big fan of saying fake it until you make it, but there is truth sometimes to keep going until it starts having an impact on you. Spiritual practices are often like that. You may not see a huge difference at first, but if you stick with them, they often end up becoming meaningful and sometimes even transformative. We often think that how we experience the world is just the way it is, unchanging, unchangeable, and it's not. We have far more power than we usually imagine. A practice of gratitude, a real, deep, intentional practice, can be powerful, can be transformative. It can help change how we experience the world. Now, perhaps a few of you are thinking in your heads, sure, gratitude, the ministers have to talk about it at this time of year, but come on, look at the world around us. Pandemic, people of color getting killed by the police, children separate from their parents and kept in cages by our government, and so much more. Come on, really, gratitude? If you're one of those people, I say to you, yes, gratitude, exactly. It's because of what you're thinking. It's because of all of the hardship that we need to practice the power of gratitude more than ever. If we are going to have the inner resources and energy we need to do the incredibly hard work that is in front of us, we're going to need spiritual practices that ground and renew us. Maybe you already have one of those, and if so, great. But even if so, and definitely if not, you might try out a practice of gratitude. And the same thing is true of the holiday season. It may feel hard to be grateful when we're not getting to be with family, and maybe you're feeling sad or lonely or isolated. Again, all the more important for our spirits and souls to have a practice of gratitude so that we can still find the good in what is, even as we grieve what can't be. There's a saying about meditation that goes something like this. What good is this meditation? It doesn't make the sun rise. The response, no. What it does is make you awake so you don't miss the sun rising. An intentional practice of gratitude can help us into exactly this kind of space. It can bring us into the present moment. It can help us to find the joy and goodness that exists all around us. Joy and goodness that I promise exists, even when chaos and darkness are literally swirling all around us. And so this morning, in this season of gratitude, I invite you to stop taking gratitude for granted and instead try intentionally practicing gratitude with depth and breadth, with presence and meaning. We call the holiday Thanksgiving, but really, when we genuinely practice gratitude and feel it in the moment, we receive more than we could ever imagine.
Who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. There is hurting in my family, there is sorrow in my town, there is panic in the nation.
delish.
For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. Give me a mighty oak to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my tears. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you, everyone. What an amazing gathering and service. I just want to do it this way all the time. So I don't know about some of you, however, I had a resistant relationship to gratitude for a long time. I was told my whole life, you should be grateful. You should be grateful. You should be grateful. So it was something that I resisted. About 5 years ago, that changed. And I want to start with that story. So I was sitting with a friend together in her living room, talking about this. And she looked at me and she said, feel it. Rebecca, feel it. I looked at her as though she were speaking some language I didn't understand. And she continued, she said, I don't think it's how many things are on your list. It's about feeling it. Just one. Try it again. So I took my long list of all the things that I was resentful for having to write down that I was grateful for and actually didn't feel grateful for, and I tried it again. And I just chose one. And my heart broke open. You see, I had always been a person of more, and still more. Whether it was chocolate chip cookies or books to buy and read someday or things to do, it can be exhausting and leave us longing for even more, the opposite of what we want and need. Gratitude, like forgiveness, is a condition of the heart. It's an orientation to the world. It's a way of being in and relating to and with the world. It is, I like to say, an attitude of amazement. And it is often disproportionate to quantity or size. More doesn't necessarily leave us feeling grateful. In fact, often the opposite. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour, wrote William Blake, and how true it is. Now, certainly there are things for which more does increase our gratitude, such as a giant pile of leaves to jump into, a flock of swallows, or the sound of a baby's laugh. But even for those things, it is our ability to experience them and feel that experience that allows us to live in a state of gratitude. It is the need for a happy heart opened up wide, just as we heard in the Thanksgiving story this morning. Desiring more and more and more, or what historically might have been called greed, gets in the way of a state of gratitude, an attitude of amazement. Focusing on just one thing can help us nurture an open, happy heart. Even, however, when we've set greed aside, there are a few other things that can get in the way, that can be gremlins or gratitude robbers, namely expectations and resentments. Of course, we all have expectations. It's what makes fulfillment feel so sweet. However, what happens when we are inflexible? When we don't allow ourselves to adapt our expectations? They turn into resentments. A good friend of mine often says, an expectation is a setup for resentment. And it closes our hearts. Everyone in our story this morning had to adapt their expectations. Ed and Anne, who were expecting their homemade turkey, and Leon and his family at the Welcome Cafe, who expected no guests, except maybe for a grandmother. They all had to adapt. And it sounds like all of us here this morning on Zoom. Many of our families far away. So I want to invite us to practice this for a moment. Just a minute. Look around you now and pick up something, anything, the first thing that you see, anything. I was an unfair advantage because I knew I was going to ask you this. So I have a piece of pottery that one of my adult children made a long time ago. Just pick anything up. And now take a deep breath. And imagine letting go of all your expectations or even definitions of the thing you're holding. Take another deep breath and allow yourself to focus on just this one thing for the next 10 seconds. What color is it? Is it heavy or light? Smooth or bumpy? Breathe and be with your thing. And now look again. What does this bring to your life? Or what might it? Beauty? Memories? Creativity? What are the possibilities for this thing? Is it something that you've overlooked? Feel your heart soften and open. Feel the gratitude you have for this one tiny object. And then thank it for being here and being a part of your life. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wild flower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. The power of gratitude lives in this one thing. And that one thing. Its magnifying power is profound. My wish for all of us this Thanksgiving is not more, but the ability to experience the world and its gifts as they are in one thing. Amen.
Friends, each of our respective congregations has some words or sets of words which we say together each Sunday, and in comparing the various sets of words, I can tell you that none of them are exactly the same. So now we are going to share together in a unison affirmation intended to reflect the spirit of the many different affirmations of our respective congregations, but of course found directly in none of them. So I would invite you to join with me in saying together this shared affirmation for our gathered community this morning. For the doctrine of reconciling love entrusted to us by our ancestors, for the sacramental search for truth to liberate both mind and spirit, for the blessing of the call to serve, to heal what is broken and to help what can be helped. We give thanks this day as one body. Though we may be separated by distance, love unites us. Though we may be bound by our failings, truth frees us. Though we may be afraid of the world's great pain, service demands that we act. May the ways of the holy be revealed to us, and may we explore them together.
Before we end our time together, I want to invite everyone to stay after the service is over and join in our virtual coffee hour by joining in our breakout rooms. We will randomly assign everyone into a breakout room for 15 minutes of conversation. We hope everyone will stay and say hello to your fellow UUs from the North Shore. The ministers will stay on, but we will be waiting in the main room so that we can say goodbye to you when you leave. And now, in closing, I leave us with the words of theologian Walter Rauschenbusch. This is his Thanksgiving prayer. Oh God, we thank you for this earth, our home, for the wide sky and the blessed sun, for the salt sea and the running water, for the everlasting hills and the never resting winds, for trees and the common grass underfoot. We thank you for our senses, by which we hear the songs of birds and see the splendor of the summer fields and taste of the autumn fruits and rejoice in the feel of the snow and smell the breath of the spring. Grant us a heart wide open to all this beauty, and save our souls from being so blind that we pass on seeing when even the common thorn bush is aflame with your glory, O God, our Creator, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Go in peace. Blessed be.